do that. We click the buttons. We click the buttons. Oh. Here we go. There's always that horrible moment when I click the button to swap from the holding screen to the start. And you're just like, please work. No, we appear to be rolling. We do appear to be rolling, which is a good start for everybody, all things considered. We like that a lot. 2 secs, sorry, I've just noticed something up in the corner of the room, which is fine. There we go. Okay. It's a bit of a cobweb, I was just a bit confused as to what it was, so therefore I moved it. Such is the way of things. Right, we'll just give it a moment, let people come in. Hope everyone is doing all right. You can see the folks from Let's Talk Hockey are here. Mr. Graham Hamilton is in, of course. I don't know when you're back on Twitch, Graham, but if you like your bits and pieces, if you like your Twitch streaming, Graham has been chatting hockey, playing some NHL as he goes. He's not mastered the ability to do both at the same time, it should be said. But I don't think even he would admit to such things on that front. John is in. Remember to answer the warm-up question there, of course. The ultimate song to play right before face-off, because Dave has Dave P has stuck in the chat. Faithless, Insomnia, good, you know, solid tune. That was the tune Romford used to play back at Ron Valley Way. I have to confess that my one, I'm not a huge fan of the band, I must confess, but I think in the right moment, it is the perfect song just before warm-up. Which is I Want It Now by Queen, particularly as well if you think about playing it at the right moment, like a cup final or a playoff final or a big game, especially if you can time it well, to get the big sort of guitar down on the guitar strum bit. It works really well. Actually, no, apologies again. Sorry, just something just really. There we go. What a pain in the bum that is. There we go. Thought I'd got the cobweb, thought I got the spider, and I hadn't got it, so I've just managed to shuffle that away, and now I feel a bit better about it. Or we better get rocking. The show must go on by Queen, another good one, and the show must go on now. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid, and all beyond the binary. It is Wednesday. It is 8 PM, and welcome back to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here to take you through the weird, wonderful, and wild world that is British ice hockey. We cover the lot, every game of every league, Belfast to Bradford, Leeds to Lee Valley, every game from across all senior leagues, male and female, of British hockey. We will go through it over the next 60 to 90 minutes here, as we do every Wednesday night, usually 8 PM here on the BOTW YouTube channel. Hope everyone is doing well. Plenty to chat about. PJ and Duncan, I knew somebody was going to chuck that in. Thank you very much, John. But yeah, plenty to chat about this evening. It should be said. Mostly, as you can see by the title of the stream that we've given it tonight, the ever classic BOTW phrase: "Why defend when you cannot defend?" And let's see what. And like I say, this has been goals galore. We've got a bunch of stuff to chat about. Of course, we've got the fantastic contributions because Joe Scutts is back from his holiday, so we have the box scores back mostly from NIHL stats, Connor's bits and pieces from SNL ice hockey updates, always really helpful on that as well. Seeing him in the chat, Luke Sadri is joining us as well. Always good to see people here. Before we kick off too far and start talking about too much of the news, of course, we need to go through all the usual bits and pieces. So if you've been here before, hum along, and if you're new, tune in your ears and listen. Banners on the wall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to British ice hockey. Of course, you can follow my commentary journey across this year. High above the Guildford Spectrum for the Guildford Flames for In the Box Thinking. Apologies, just managed to tie myself in a massive knot there, and I'm tripping over my words, and I don't quite know why. Been a bit of a weird day, and I'm quite warm. We'll take a swig of that, and you know what? The joy of being live is I can go, and we'll try that again. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to British ice hockey. You follow my commentary journey this year within the box thinking. That's our series where I break down and have a look and give you some insight into commentating on ice hockey on a regular basis, as well as a breakdown of the last game I've commentated on, which of course Didn't happen last weekend. We'll get into that in a little bit and work that one out. But you've got all of that coming across this season, as well as our Hockey Story series. New piece in production. We're 600-ish words deep. It's just been about finding a bit of time. Struggled a little bit this week to do with some bits, mostly just because the last weekend has left me knackered. And like I said, we'll talk about that momentarily. But you've got nearly 15 years worth of stuff to check out over on the website, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Then, of course, like I said, every Wednesday night for the most part, unless I'm commentating, we're here live on YouTube on a Wednesday night to talk about every single game, male and female, across every single division of the Elite League, the NIHL. That includes the National 1, 2, North and South, the SNL, as well as every division of the WNIHL, including the under-16s. In that one as well. We will chat about every game. Head down into the description if you haven't already. There's the links to all of our social medias, as well as our virtual busking hat over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. And of course, there's all the good bits, like all the other YouTube bits I will usually say. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There's plenty of stuff on there, not just the back catalogue of the What's Current stream, but plenty of interviews we've done with the movers and shakers of world hockey, including people like Steve Nell, Steve Dangle, Aaron Nell, Matty Davies, Jamie Elson when he coached the Bristol Pitbull. See the journey that they've come on. Dante Abraham, the coach of Tennessee State University, the first NCAA hockey program at a historic black college. Plenty of stuff to check out there over on the YouTube channel. And like I say, the great bit is because we're live, which means if you're on catch up, all good. But yeah, like I say, you know, however you want to tune in and join us, that's absolutely fine. This is all done through YouTube and YouTube Music, so we do sit there as a podcast on that, so you can listen to us in your ears as you're doing bits there on YouTube Music. But of course, it also means you get the chat. If you are live, questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything you want to chuck in as we wander our way through British hockey for the next 60 to 90 minutes, we will have a go at that. But of course, you do need to remember the golden rule. If you are using the chat, the golden rule here at BOTW, rule number 1 is DBAD. Don't be a dick, be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings, and we will have a jolly good time. Great to see some other songs being chucked in there, aside from Let's Get Ready to Rumble by PJ and Duncan. ACDC's Thunderstruck, says Jamie. Andrew Day, the man, the myth, the legend, our roving WNIHL reporters chucked in a few there. Right Here, Right Now by Fatboy Slim. Ready to Go by Republica, a classic there. Let's Go by Calvin Harris, another one there. Of course, a favourite of Bavy and Basingstoke. That one, it should be said. Either way, a few bits and pieces rolling along at the moment. And as we know, the big bit of news in the immediacy today coming out of NIHL 1 South, where the Chelmsford Chieftains, of course, last year's playoff winners, on having an okay season so far. Still, obviously, the Streatham Slough 1-2 punch at the top of South 1 causing a lot of problems. However, Chelmsford has still been hanging around, but they have now lost a massive piece of the puzzle. Captain Alan Lack asking for his release and has been granted that by the Chieftains just before Christmas. No talk exactly of where he is going as of we are starting the show. We'll obviously try and keep an eye on that, if only to see whether he ends up at Romford. But lots of permutations in that one, because of course Alan Lack, former EPL champion in Basingstoke, multiple trophy winner in places in NIHL Division 1, where he ends up, of course, yet to be seen. Graham Hamilton says he's staying in Division 1. If he signs for Blackburn, I'll be laughing. But we will, of course, we will see what Alan does. Of course, Alan heavily involved in coaching the juniors at Romford as well. Will he end up with the Buccaneers? Who knows on that front? Maybe he goes in and helps Ethan James, of course. Although the Bucks did get themselves some extra points on the board this weekend, which we will look at when we start chatting about South 1. Elsewhere, of course, we've had the bits and pieces have been flying out. It's been a pretty busy weekend of hockey, and I was nowhere to be seen. I had a weekend off, which was, I think, well timed, and I think probably a good thing in that sense, where having a bit of a break, having gone pretty hard since like the end of August. If you think that game against Amiens, you think I've done 14 games in that stretch of time, including a couple of midweek games into the bargain as well, and I've been to Basingstoke once. So I've had a couple of sort of weekends of sort of lighter bits and pieces, but of course life gets in the way. So, but having a big weekend off like this, where I was off not because there wasn't a game where something was already there and I couldn't do hockey. Now, interestingly, it should be said, I ended up coming home from London and I had to go past Guildford because going down the M3 wasn't an option because of a car crash. So I technically could have made the game. I was also completely exhausted, which was a terrible idea. Max Artis, who usually does the Manchester Storm webcast, came down and covered for Guildford's win against Dundee, which of course Guildford absolutely slap a team about when I'm not there. Thanks, boys. Much appreciated on that one. But it should be said, the whole purpose of me not being at hockey this weekend was because, having got him the tickets for his birthday, I took my boy to see Gladiators at the Wembley Arena, and it was great. It was a long day, very long day, but a really, really good day. Really enjoyed myself. Managed to drop a load of chips on myself and spill ketchup down myself, which was always top. But as we've seen, making a few mistakes here, there, and everywhere is pretty much part of the brand. BOTW, I am historically very, very clumsy, which making the fact I have to climb a ladder every week for the most part a bit of a terrible idea. Either way, we of course now have hit December. Christmas is rolling around. We are starting to edge towards that midway point of the league season for a lot of teams. Cup positionings are being decided. Like the leagues are starting to really, really take shape. Unless you're Basingstoke, you're still 5-6 games behind everybody. But yeah, there was a lot going on. It was an interesting experience to be able to just leave hockey behind for a weekend and not really worry about it, but still made it back in time and was able to watch the Flames and Dundee, so I was able to keep tabs on what was going on, even though I wasn't involved. Get back to it this coming Saturday because Guildford take on Fife, which will be a lot of fun. Very excited to see Fife, and of course the Flames needing to try and get some momentum now, come up against a Fife side who won both their games last weekend for the first time in quite some time. What are the big bits of news people want to talk about tonight then? Because obviously there's obviously a lot going on. Of course, the interesting bit of news that's come out of Ice Hockey UK is CEO Henry Stalins is literally opening his office door this upcoming Thursday. Thursday morning up at Ice Sheffield. The Chief Executive Officer of Ice Hockey UK and of England Ice Hockey as it currently stands, ahead of the unification vote being held by England Ice Hockey and Scottish Ice Hockey on the 17th of December, is going to do a bit of an open house to have a chat to people and see what and answer people's questions and queries if they want to go down and want to chat to him. Now, organised at very short notice, according to Stalins himself. Some changes in his schedule meant that he was around and able to do it. A very interesting way of doing that. Now, I personally would hope that the folk who are pushing towards this would do a little bit more kind of engagement with folk, with fans. Of course, obviously, that needs to be managed in some sort of ways. Whether it's some sort of Zoom session or whatever, and doing it in that sense would be good. I was hoping maybe there'd be some sort of hockey media event where some of us who are involved in hockey media could be able to ask those questions a bit more directly. I know Henry has been on a lot of podcasts and a lot of bits and pieces, but like I say, there's lots of good talk, but I'm very interested to see what kind of happens. And of course, as I mentioned earlier this week on social media, there's that lingering doubt in the back of my head. Those of us older folk will remember 5 years ago, mid-pandemic, of course, where everything was on the table for a unification vote then, and people voted it down. There was a movement of people, one of which is now chair of Ice Hockey UK, saying that unification wasn't the right idea. And it was the right idea 5 years ago. It is still the right idea now. Clearly, the folk in charge now feel that the circumstances are better. But I'm interested because have the fears of the folk who voted against it at the England Ice Hockey Association's special, extraordinary general meeting 5 years ago, have those questions and queries been answered? Now, yes, there was a movement. Paul Reagan was involved. Clifton Rossley was involved. They said that unification is not was not the right thing to do at that time. I vehemently disagreed with them, and like I say, there is a lot of talk that's been happening. And I think the issue, particularly for me as a cynic, when it comes to some of these things, I kind of want action. I'm less fussed and less faffed about such bits and pieces because there's a lot of good talk going on. But we saw it fall 5 years ago, and those people who voted it down before never spoke out and said why. And my worry is that there's a lot of talk saying this is a great idea. Well, Andrew Miller, Joy Johnston, lots of people 5 years ago said exactly the same thing. And I'm worried it comes around again. Now, as I've said before, and I will say again, the unification for the sport is the right decision, and it should happen. But, and there's my worry on that front. Where are the fears being allayed? Where are those conversations? Because the people who were against it last time, there was a couple of people who were very vocal, one of whom doesn't really do much involved in British ice hockey anymore, and one is now the literal top of the tree, are now involved. But I don't think those voices necessarily will have disappeared into the ether. That's what I'm interested to see. I'm interested to hear from those people, because I think that whilst a lot of us feel that it is the right thing, it still needs a 75% vote at both SIH and EIH's meetings to pass. All it takes is enough people. It's not a straight majority vote. 75% have to vote to pass it at both meetings. Scottish ice hockey, of course, in the past got past that hurdle. It wasn't the Scots who were the issue; it was England ice hockey. I can see that Carol from the Billingham Starcast has mentioned that they've got Henry on. Like I say, I mean, I've not reached out to Henry because my issue is I feel like he's saying the same things again and again. And if I'm going to ask him on, I want to make sure I've got my questions in order that I don't ask the same things that everybody else asks. I think is probably what I'd say on that front, because for me, I don't think it's a lot of the same stuff being said again and again, and there's my worry. I'm not going to do something from this side just for the sake of doing something from this side, and and I appreciate there's a little bit of Anthony, you're being a contrarian again. And maybe I am slightly in this case, but I don't want to do the same things that everybody else does for the sake of doing them. Just having them on. I don't want it to be another thing on the media round. I want people to come on and be interviewed by me because I'm going to press them and I'm going to ask them questions that make them give answers. I don't want them to be able to rattle stuff off. And I think that is my concern a little bit, because I think there are some questions that I want to ask, but I need to formulate how I ask them first. If that makes sense, I don't want to just blurt it out, which I appreciate. As a man who does a live show every week with very little in the way of notes is a terrible plan, but I need to make sure if I'm going to do this, one, that it's done right, and two, that I've got the questions I want in a way where I think I'm going to get an answer out of them that will challenge the people, because I don't, and I'm sure the folk at Billingham have done a really, really good job, and I'm not going to pre-guess their questions, and you 100% should go and listen to them, because if there's anybody who will talk your ear off about hockey and ask you a tough question, it'll be Craig, Carol and Jono. I need to make sure the questions in my head are the right ones in the right way. Because I've got some, like I say, there's a few niggling doubts in the back of in the pit of my stomach, in the back of my chest, that I just need to kind of formulate before I start firing them off. I'm just trying to, rather than shoot and hope, I want to aim and fire, if that makes sense. But Henry, if you're watching, whenever, I'm sure we can figure that one out. In some ways, it'd almost be more interesting to interview him the day after, rather than now, because the big question is, what now? And I think that's almost a more interesting question in some stage. But yeah, there's a bunch of ways to figure it out. There's a bunch of stuff to do, and as always, you should go check out the Billingham Stars podcast. I know they've spoken to Nick Rothwell as well this week from Retribe. Nick, of course, has got Tony Hand involved in an ambassador role with that, so definitely go check out those guys. Unusual to get a 2-release week from our friends up in Parmo country, so that is a lot of fun there. On more sort of regular run of the mill news, of course, some news today out of Fife. David Booth is on his way in about a fortnight, by the look of it. The social media post coming out today from the Flyers that the former 500 game NHLer is waiting on his visa to clear. He's training back home, is expecting to be with the Flyers the week before Christmas, the weekend of the 19th and 20th of December, which would see his first Flyers home game be Sunday the 20th of December, which should be an interesting one. Won't lie, a little bit disappointed, because I was hoping I would get to call that one this weekend, as he was coming into town. However, not to be. I will catch that one later in the season, no doubt. But but certainly it was an interesting move by the Flyers. It's interesting that it's taken this long, but ultimately as well, one of the things, if you are David Booth with a wife and small children, and you have got that much of a base of bits and pieces in hockey, you do get to kind of call your own shots a little bit. Probably one of the things for Fife is that he didn't need to come in or didn't want to come in before he felt the need to do so. And ultimately, he's joining a Flyers side that, at least for this week, are on something of a roll. We will find out how long and how lengthy that amount of momentum turns out to be. Like I said, any other bits of news, questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything else that anybody else wants to kind of chuck in, please do. He says doing that quick skim of bits and pieces for any immediate news, because of course the one issue with scrolling social media for hockey news in December is every team and their mothers. We've had Black Friday sales, we've had Cyber Monday sales, we've got Christmas advent calendars, we've got everything and their mother flying around. Everyone's Spotify Wrapped has come out today as well. There'll be no prizes for guessing which bands are on mine, mostly because like I say, if you follow me enough, you know what sort of music I am into. Just having a tiny quick skim, because the other thing we do need to mention, and I will talk about it very briefly, because the folks at AVFTB talked about it last night, that yesterday was the 25th anniversary of the first home game of the Belfast Giants, which is, in fact, obviously there are clubs older in British hockey than the Giants. You think about the fact that Fife are 60 years older than most of the teams in British hockey. If you think of the clubs in the elite league, the Storm are obviously the youngest. The Flyers are obviously the oldest. And when it comes to actual age, the Giants are one of the newer clubs in British hockey as a result. But it's a club that has and occupies a really, really unique space. I'm not going to go into the complete socio-political situation in Northern Ireland, even though I must confess it is of personal interest. I do find it a very, very interesting topic to look at. But Belfast occupies a really unique space in British hockey because, of course, they are isolated to a point away from everybody else. A team with a junior system that has junior teams playing under the SIH banner currently, but all the rec hockey is dealt with by the Irish Ice Hockey Association, which was a little tidbit I found out the other day, which I found quite interesting. And then the Giants, of course, play in a UK-wide league, having first been in the Super League and then joining the Elite League after that. It's been a fascinating watch over those years for people who remember the very, very beginning. Of course, that first game 25 years ago against the Ayr Scottish Eagles, another team that now don't exist. Though, of course, the hockey in Ayr does live on through the North Ayrshire Wild. But yeah, Belfast, the club occupies a unique space in British hockey, but it also occupies a unique place in the sporting life and the socio-political life of the city of Belfast, when you consider the fact that it is a team for all, where things are done slightly differently there because of the history of that city. It's had its tough times. I don't need to mention the name of the gentleman who bought the club, who shouldn't have bought the club, but they are one of our banner organisations in British hockey, if you'll pardon the pun, given that we are on banners on the wall. But certainly, as I said the other day, all the best and a salute to all the folk who built it, who maintain it, who love it, and want to push it on, because I think Belfast as an organisation has done a lot for British hockey. You think about the Friendship Four and the opening of the door that's been for players from the NCAA coming into all levels, really. American, not just Canadian university hockey has had a massive impact on at least the top three divisions, where you think of the fact that players both in the NCAA and the ACHA have played in both North One and South One. So there's a lot kind of going on there. We send all our best to the folk in Belfast, and of course remember to check out our friends at AVFTB, a view from the bridge for Giants specific news should you be that way inclined. Either way, we need to chat about some results from last weekend, starting as we usually do in the Elite League. We start at the top and then work our way through, because of course a very, very busy weekend. Plenty of games on Friday, 2 7-1s in fact, and yet I sat myself down and watched one of them, trying to keep tabs on and everything that was going on. But two big wins for Nottingham and Cardiff, both winning 7-1 at home on Friday night. That's a way to kick off your weekend for sure. Guildford and Glasgow thoroughly put to the sword. The start of the good weekend for Jamie Russell and the Fife Flyers, starting in Manchester in a real back and forth ding-dong battle that the Flyers end up winning in overtime. So it doesn't Manchester managing to squeak a point out of it, but obviously not a very happy Cam Critchlow. But joy unbounded for the folk from Kirkcaldy. Elsewhere on Friday night, the other game, Belfast with a 4-1 win as they play the second of their 5 games on the road in a stretch because of the Friendship 4. They win away at Dundee. In Saturday, Manchester, though, get themselves back to winning ways. They lost in overtime on the Friday night. They win on overtime on the Saturday, beating Coventry by 3-2. Giants got themselves a 4-point weekend, beating Glasgow in the shootout. A much better performance at home from Glasgow, this one after getting shellacked by Nottingham at the NIC, but they end up only getting a point as the Giants take the extras there. And then, of course, what they call the biggest rivalry in British hockey, but it doesn't say Basingstoke or Bracknell, so we'll just give them the benefit of the doubt. But Stephen Harper with the overtime winning goal. The Steelers beat the Panthers in the top of the table clash in the Elite League. Sunday then, only 3 games, and as we talked about already, Guildford somehow ended up losing 7-1 on Friday night and came out of the weekend with a positive goal difference. Only just, but they do end up with a positive goal difference. They gave Dundee an absolute kicking, 5 second period goals from the Flames. Justin Fazio, 20 saves from 21 shots. Not a good performance from Dundee in the slightest, though. Of course, we do need to mention the fact that Jarrett Fisk coming out of the game injured, having pulled Cruz. They put the other keeper in, and then the keeper got injured on Guildford's 8th goal. Not a great one there. Coventry, it's been a bit of a rough one for Coventry. I think it's 8 games on the spin without a win. They lose at home 5-1 to the Sheffield Steelers in the Skydome, and then you can see it there at the top. They managed to do it on the road, and they found a way to do it at home. Fife beat Cardiff in Kirkcaldy, a 4-point maximum weekender, 2 overtime wins back to back for the Fife Flyers, and as we see by heading into the table, they're still bottom, but they've played 5 more games than Dundee, but they are it is at least something much more respectable. Fife were already out of what we call the Goose Egg Club here. They had already won during this season because of their Challenge Cup wins, but finally with some wins on the board in league play, as you can see there. The Steelers get the extra point against the Panthers in their game from Saturday, so the Steelers are top of the Elite League as it stands, but the Panthers have a game in hand and could overtake them. Drop down then is by a couple of points to Cardiff. Belfast only played 13 league games, so they have 3 games in hand on the Devils and the Steelers and 2 games in hand on Nottingham, so still very much in the conversation. Manchester, Glasgow, Guildford and Coventry make up the playoff spots, but as we said, it's been a pretty torrid affair for the Blaze in recent weeks. Heading then into the fixtures, just 2 on this coming Friday. Glasgow and Nottingham will try again, hopefully for the Clan. They're at least at home this time. If they lose 7-1 in this one, I think there'll be something of an inquisition. Manchester take on Belfast is the other game on a Friday night. That will be at the Storm Shelter. Into Saturday then, and there is where you will find me. 6 p.m. face-off at the Guildford Spectrum between the Flames and the Flyers. The Flames, of course, were a bit battered and bruised after the first period of their encounter up in Kirkcaldy, and then Fife, well, they blew a gasket and got themselves that delay of game penalty for not lining up for face-off on time, and Guildford went nuts in the second period. Elliot Lewis, not Elliot Lewis, that's the Dundee game. Got those the wrong way around. But either way, the Flames pulled themselves away and won by a quite convincing margin in Kirkcaldy. Can the Flyers extract some revenge as they look to go for 3 wins on the bounce for the first time in what must be a couple of years? Panthers have got their 3-3 weekend in Scotland. They are away in Dundee on Saturday. Cardiff take on Belfast. A big game there at the Vindicat on Saturday night. And Sheffield and Coventry will about face from last weekend and will meet at the Utilita. 4 games then on Sunday. Cardiff take on Glasgow down in South Wales. Dundee versus Sheffield. Fife versus Nottingham, and then Coventry will host the Guildford Flames at the Skydome on Sunday. Which means the Elite League is done. It's time to take a look at the NIHL National Division. Plenty of stuff going on, of course. Some cup permutations still very much in the balance here. And a big start off of the weekend for the Leeds Knights, needing results in the cup and needing results in the league in general to keep pace with the Swindon Wildcats. And a shutout for Sam Gospel on Saturday night. A 3-0 win at home for the Knights. Swindon, though, definitely not going away. They dispatched with Telford by 6-3 at the Link Centre for the league leaders. But Bristol and Basingstoke go back and forth, but eventually it goes the literal distance. And Luke Spadafora with the shootout winner for the Bison. Of course, they lost their unbeaten record, shut out in Romford the previous weekend to end their winning streak. The Bison back to winning ways on Saturday night down in the southwest. So whether the southwest is red or blue, certainly at least the M4 and the M3 are green and black for now. And then MK, depleted bench, of course, calling up a few lads from the D-side Dragons, including Reece Edwards back in the National Division, of course, after leaving Hull. But a shootout win at the Thunderdome for the Sheffield Steel Dogs. Of course, their impressive eight-game winning run halted by Basingstoke in Basingstoke. And then up in Dumfries, well, a point for the Sharks, an important point for the Sharks at the bottom of the table, but they lose in overtime against the Peterborough Phantoms, so the extra point heading back down to heading to Breton. At least, well, after the weekend, it was a double header on that one. And Basingstoke go from the sublime to the ridiculous. 5 goals in regulation on Saturday night. And then shut out at home by the Leeds Knights on the Sunday. A 2-0 win, a back-to-back shutout weekend. 120 minutes of scoreless hockey for Sam Gospel, reminding everybody that maybe he just is the best netminder in the division still. Solway lose in regulation against Peterborough, so a 4-point weekend for the Phantoms, and managing to beat Solway in regulation that time. A pretty healthy points haul heading back down to Cambridgeshire for Ashley Tate's side. Romford and MK, of course, has generated a little bit of discussion, mostly because of Mikey Power cross-checking the ever-living daylights out of Jarvis Hunt. Could Hunt have avoided hitting the keeper? Probably, if we're 100% honest. However, the way of things, what should Power have done? Probably shouldn't have cross-checked a guy on the floor. Of course, being a Wednesday, we know Dops usually meets around tonight. We do not know whether there will be any word out of anything, and he says just very quickly double checking now in case there's anything quickly flying out. There is not, so we will see what happens in terms of Mikey Power's bits and pieces there. But a 14-goal thriller that the Raiders end up winning 9-5. So as we get firmly and fully even deeper into the Why Defend When You Cannot Defend Chronicles of this weekend, as then we go to the next game. Hull. I mean, if you've not seen Matty Davis's post-game interview, Matty Davis has done a few angry ones of these. You shouldn't score 6 goals at home and lose, I think would probably be the thing that a lot of people would say. But a big win for Bristol and a pretty productive weekend for Jake Bricknell, who's now hot on the heels of Luke Ferrara at the top of the point scorers in the National Division, now with 40. Ferrara has 41. An 8-6 win on the road up in Hull on a Sunday evening. I mean, it's a horrible journey enough driving all the way up there from the southwest. If you're going to head back home, at least it looks like the Pitbulls and Anish Padlek have put a smile on their fans' faces for that one. And the other game, a 4-point weekend again for the Sheffield Steel Dogs. They sneak out the win by 3-2 over in Shropshire in the late face-off against the Telford Tigers. Looking at the league table in the National Division there, it's still the story it's pretty much been for a while. Swindon top, Leeds hot on their heels, but the Wildcats have got a game in hand that would take them 3 points clear of the Knights and 4 points clear of the Steel Dogs. But the Steel Dogs still not disappearing on that one. The top 3 really starting to pull away because there is a 7-point gap between 3rd and 4th. The Dogs on 32. The Phantoms on 25. Phantoms do have a game in hand, so the maximum they could get to at the moment would be 27. But it still does look like the top 3 are really making an impression, of course, as Brady Parker settles into life in Sheffield. MK then in 5th, 23 from 22. Romford, Hull and Telford making up the rest of the playoff places. Of course, Matty Davies not happy with his side's output on Sunday, will not be happy with being in 7th position. Bristol then are 3 points back of Telford, and the Bison have played 16 games. They have 6 games in hand over the teams above them. The Bison win all of those. They are 5 points back of Telford and 2 points back of Bristol. The playoffs are not out of the question for Basingstoke at the minute. In terms of the National Division Cup, though, you'll notice that there I've cut the table somewhat short. This is because Everybody below 5th is out of the running. I know, what a crushing surprise. But also as well, Leeds and Milton Keynes have played all of their games. And the team that is very much in the firing line is the MK Lightning. They have played all of their games, but are level on points with Peterborough. Swindon are a point back, and Sheffield are a point back with 2 games in hand. MK are on the cusp of missing out on the cup semi-finals. The tournament they won 2 seasons ago. Of course, fixtures upcoming will determine a lot of that. And of course, we do have the fantastic graphics done for us by Max Van Mullen. A big thanks to Max. Of course, congratulations, young man, on your weekend, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. But just the one game on Friday. Planet Ice Basingstoke, as the Bison start to really catch up on some of those fixtures. 7:30 p.m. face-off for them and the Telford Tigers. Into Saturday then, the Bison back at home twice in the space of 24 hours. It's a 6:30 p.m. face-off at home for the visit of the Hull Seahawks. Bristol take on MK. And you do wonder, what, given how MK's form has been all over the shop, what sort of result you could end up getting against a Pitbull side that scored 8 goals last Sunday. Peterborough take on Sheffield. Swindon take on Solway, a side that they historically have very good form against, especially at home. Telford, after being away in Basingstoke on Friday night, are home on Saturday. They take on Romford. Into Sunday then, Hull will head back to the World's Most Versatile Arena to take on Peterborough. Leeds take on Solway. MK will face and head back to the Thunderdome to take on Bristol. Romford take on Swindon, and the Bison have the long journey up to Sheffield for the early face-off against the Sheffield Steeldogs. A 3-3, one of a couple the Bison will have upcoming. That's the National and the Elite League all done. I'm going to pause to take a breath so I can have some water. And we'll see. And like I say, questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, plenty going on there in the top 2 tiers. The first, like I say, that catch up of fixtures for the Bison is going to start making a difference now. 3-3. How will the legs last out when they got that long journey to Sheffield against a Steeldogs side that is playing pretty well, is in the title hunt, and will be looking for revenge given the result that happened at Basingstoke a couple of weeks ago. What's that from Jamie? Dops could have resisting official on Mikey Power's rap sheet. Other angles from incident show Power clearly resisting linesman Jason Earl. You'll forgive me for my lack of surprise at that one, I hope, Jamie. I wouldn't be surprised to see Raiders put a supplementary discipline request on Jordan Spadafor for his part in the Power Hunt incident. I mean, to be fair, the whole thing is bonkers. Yes, Hunt gets clipped ever so slightly, but he could have done more. I think he could have done more to avoid the incident, I think, is probably the thing I would say. This does not excuse Mikey Power losing his cool. And like I say, cross-checking the back of Jarvis Hunt into the floor is just silly sausage behaviour. The guy's getting life tax. For me, I'd be interested to see what happens, because of course we saw Ben Greenhalgh get a couple of games for swinging around and catching somebody in the head inadvertently with his stick the other day. This is a deliberate act. Like, there is no accident on purpose. There's no accident. There's not even accident on purpose here from Power. He's cross-checked the guy on the floor in the back really hard. If he sees south of 3 games, I'd be incredibly surprised on that front. 3 for me is the bottom of the line for me on that one. If he got more, it would depend how high. I think if someone turned around and said we're giving him 6 games, I'd be a bit surprised. For me, this is somewhere between 3 and 5, depending on how harsh Dops are feeling. But for me, like I say, if he get 2 games is not enough on this particular occasion in my gut, given what they've given 2 games for. Yes, of course, we can argue it till the cows come home. However, there's something to be said for just the fact that you need to punish behaviour like that. Yes, you can stand up for your teammates. Yes, the guy has crashed your goalie, but also let him stand up and go one-on-one with him. Isn't this what we talk about? About fighting having its place in hockey. Well, that's not fighting. That's just walloping a guy on the ground. That's not doing anything. If you're wanting a guy to take his medicine, there are ways within the sport for people to take their medicine. I'm looking at 5 games going off the Brad Bowring incident. I think the issue for me is I think it feels like a little bit of the consistency from Dops it's not been quite as consistent this year in the NIHL. Of course, the Elite League Dops has very rarely been called into action. It should be said. However, the ones that they have, of course, a lot of people have not been as pleased been slightly confused with some of the bits and pieces that Elite League DOPs have called. NHL DOPs have usually been okay, there or thereabouts. You can have the argument with a lot of people. You know, you can kick that football around and see how you feel about it. But ultimately, most people generally come away with it feeling all right. But ultimately, not too much and not too, like I say, there's a line here, and I think ultimately as well, Hump's not going to get anything, so I wouldn't worry about that if I was an MK fan. Fascinated to see what comes out of it from a Mikey Power perspective. So we will see what goes on with that one. Just double checking any immediate news coming out. Nothing that I can see in the immediacy. Apologies, just a slight spike. Why is that coming out of there? That's fine. Let's do that. There we go. Bit of a moment where I was sort of talking back to myself and I was starting to echo in my ears. Interesting. Okay, so okay. Well, interesting. That's a bit of news that we'll hold until we talk about Division 2. Big thanks to Telford for releasing news just ahead of the show, but only putting it on Facebook. Thanks for that one, guys. But yeah, either way, if you bear with me momentarily, we need to... I think what we'll do, actually, we always leave them till afterwards. So what we're going to do today, we will actually talk first about the SNL. Big thanks, of course, to Connor over at SNL Ice Hockey Updates over on Facebook. It has occurred to me that you cannot read the very bottom of that. So, oh no, we'll do that. Sound's gone. Oh dear. I have not hit the mute button. Oh no! How about now? Is that better? I can't think what that's doing. I'm going to pause for a second because you're all telling me the sound has gone. And it shows that my microphone is working. Can you hear me now? Somebody put something in the chat. Da, 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 da. There we go. I realised what I did. Fantastic. That's what I needed. Thank you, Andrew. Hey! To be fair, regular viewers of the show, I've not managed to shank the sound that often. So I was due getting it wrong. What have I got wrong? I didn't set the stream live properly the other week. That was pretty impressive. I sorted out the camera. When you share the screen, you go on mute. Interesting. That's a bit of an odd one. I actually think it wasn't sharing the screen, Sharon. I think what the problem was, it's twofold. I realised what I did. I accidentally unmuted the desktop volume, which has shanked it slightly. And the processor has to catch up on my laptop for when I swap the things. But thank you. I having broken something, I actually know how I broke it, so I can try not to do that again. Either way, in the SNL, Warriors winning 4-3. North Air and Solway in those two teams battling in towards the playoff spots at the bottom. Now, let's face it, they're both going to make the playoffs now. But a win for North Air again, 8-5. They win at home against the Solway SNL roster. Richie Bentham with 2 goals for the Sharks. Bailey Thompson, Gordon Horn, and Thomas Vrostek with the goals for the Sharks, and for North Air in their victory, 2 goals each for Dylan Murray, Jacob Woods, and Zach Kenneth, Hayden Woods, and Rocco Murray also on the scoreboard. And then you can see it there. Finally, somebody manages to beat the Edinburgh Capitals, and it is Scott Jamieson's overtime winning goal for the Kirkcaldy Kestrels that gets the Capitals' winning run to an end. They were perfect until last weekend. It's Kirkcaldy who knocked them off. 2 goals in that one for Jamieson, including the OT winner, along with a goal for Ross Henderson. Chad Smith and Joel Gauchi had the Caps 2-0 up, but not enough in the end. Elsewhere on Saturday, just the one game in the Scottish Cup, the second leg, of course, of that Scottish Cup quarter-final, Aberdeen with a comfortable win over the Kilmarnock Thunder. 10-1 on the night, 20-5 on aggregate there for the Lynx. Connor Duncan and Ewan Hanton, Ian Malcolm and Jordan Layden with 2 goals apiece. Callum Hill and Mark Lang with the other goal there. Ross Chalmers, the lone Kilmarnock scorer on the night. 2 games on Sunday, and Edinburgh immediately back to winning ways. That one slip up and that drop point, not enough to dissuade them. They give North Air a battering at Murrayfield on Sunday. A 5-goal night, as you can see there, for Joe Lynch in a 12-1 victory for the Capitals. Sean Cochran with 2, and then goals from Chad Smith, Joel Gauchi, Rhys Steinhaus, Richard Grigors, and Scott McKay. Zach Kenneth with his second goal, with another goal on the weekend for him for North Air. And then in the Cup, the first leg of their quarter-final, of course, Whitley and Solway had a play-in game to decide the last quarter-final spot. And the first leg of that quarter-final, Whitley winning by 4-1 at Hill Heads on Saturday evening. Ben Richards, Cam Ware, Jamie Ord and Ollie Jardine with the goals for Tony Hanside. Gary Simpson with the lone goal for the Pirates. Quick look then at the SNL League table, and as we can see there, finally a notch against the Edinburgh Capitals. They are level on points now with Whitley, but have got 3 games in hand over the Warriors. And then Paisley, of course, who, like I said, they've really re-upped that, really added to that roster. Of course, getting Barry McKenzie, getting Craig Peacock, getting Gary Simpson in. Lots of guys added to that Paisley roster, and they are starting to claw some way back, but they are in 3rd place with 4 games more than Edinburgh on 21 points. Dundee on 19. Kirkcaldy, after their victory, are on 16. Aberdeen on 14. And then, as you can see, quite a drop down. North Air have now got level on wins, at least, with Solway, but the Sharks hold the tiebreaker at the moment and have a game in hand. Kilmarnock not taking part in league action this week. They remain, however, rooted to the foot of the SNL. 13 defeats from 13 games and just 19 goals scored. Let's have a quick look at the other one there from Connor. Remember to visit SNL Ice Hockey Updates over on Facebook to keep tabs on bits and pieces. But we can see there the things for the Scottish Cup. And as we know, 2 quarter-finalists already locked in. Edinburgh and Aberdeen, of course, on opposite sides of the draw, but they will take each other. There could be potential finalists, but they are already through. Caps have knocked off North Air, and Aberdeen, as we know, have battered their way past Kilmarnock. The first legs, though, have been played in those other quarter-finals. Warriors now, as we know from the weekend, they lead Paisley by 4-1 before they will reconvene in a couple of weeks at Braehead. And Dundee and Kirkcaldy, their second leg due up soon. Dundee 6-2 to the good in that one. You'll appreciate my horrible, terrible graphic because I made it literally at 6:55 this evening because again, Scottish Ice Hockey, please just put your fixtures in a readable format on your website. 3 games on Saturday, no cup games this weekend, but 3 on Saturday. Kilmarnock take on Dundee at the Galleon at 5:30, and then 2 6:30 face-offs. Kirkcaldy take on Whitley up in Fife. North Air take on Aberdeen. And then on Sunday, back as they usually are, 5 p.m. face-off at Hillheads for the Warriors. They take on the fellow SNL newcomers in Solway. That's 5 p.m. there. Paisley take on Dundee at 6:30 p.m. up in Glasgow. What we will then do is we'll then press another button and swap immediately to the NIHL, and you will see the numbers are back. Isn't it good? Massive thanks, of course, to Joe Scutts. Joe, if you're not familiar with NIHLstats.wordpress.com, make sure that you are. Joe, of course, an EIHA statistician. Now, We've not had the box scores, as we like to have them, from Joe for the last couple of weeks. Joe's been on holiday. He's come back. So what we have tonight is a bit of a hybrid. He's not managed to get himself all the way sorted with South 2 and Joe. So it was like, I'm sorry. And of course, if anybody doesn't need to apologise for the amount of work he's put into doing these kind of things for British Hockey over the last couple of years, it's Joe. So he's fine. But we do have box scores for North 1, South 1 and North 2. We'll just do a little bit of a hybrid thing for South 2 so we can have a look at the results from last weekend and the table. Either way, as we have a quick look into North 1, he says pressing the button so he can make sure he's got his bits and pieces. And this was a game I watched on Saturday, it should be said. If you've not had an opportunity to watch the Hull Jets, they have been streaming a lot of their home games live for free on YouTube. Fascinating. The commentary is unique. Let's go for unique. Of course, it's all done voluntarily, but it's a very, very interesting and different style. I can't remember the chap's name, and I'm really sorry to the Jets for that. Definitely a different way of doing comms, though, for sure. Keeps me chuckling all the way through, it should be said. But either way, revenge for the Billingham Stars, having been done by a very controversial overtime goal, because I'm sorry, Jets fans, that one was offside. Either way, Billingham managing to claw their way and get themselves the 3 points at the Worldsman Versatile Arena, though they were made to work for it. 3-0 up before the half-hour mark before Hull got themselves into the game. Ian Brown, Chris Sykes, and a first goal of the season for Lucas Campion in the league, putting the Stars 3-0 to the good. Kieran Breach making it 3-1 just a few moments later, and then a late goal from Cohen Taylor, keeping the Stars honest, but ultimately in the end the Stars managing to hold on and, like I say, avenge that defeat from a couple of weeks ago. As you can see there, the shots on goal numbers do confuse me. Firstly, Sasha Bravo, still one of the best names in ice hockey in my opinion, and the fact he wears number 1, so his jersey says Bravo 1, is awesome. But according to this, Hull outshot Billingham 58-29, and I watched that game, and I'm not 100% certain about that. If I'm completely honest. Either way, a big night in net for Jacob Hammond, 56 saves, so we're told. Elsewhere on Saturday night, another loss for the Solihull Barons, of course, beaten in that League and Cup counter the week before by D-side, and they now lose on the road in the local derby against Telford. And as you can imagine, it's that man again, Vladimir Luka, doing the damage. A 4-point night for Vlad Luka, and a hat-trick to boot. 3+1 for him and 4 assists for Finn Howells. Other goals in this one coming from James Mather, Brady Jessen and Taylor Stanton. Now, there was that little bit of news out of Telford too. He's just quickly trying to pull up the Telford Tigers bits and pieces, because they did announce just before the start of the show that we knew that there was a new man between the pipes for Telford heading into this game, which was Zach Brown, having left the Hull Jets and that very impressive performance he did put up against Billingham. But he's ended up back at the Tigers where he's played before. Pretty solid net-minding addition there to go alongside Matty Byrne. But one thing that we have been told is, and I'm just double checking this game sheet here because I can't see him on there, but Callum Griffin has now departed Tigers 2 as of this evening. Callum Griffin has departed Telford Tigers 2 with immediate effect. Has been a long-standing and loyal member of the Tigers setup, having played all his hockey in Telford, and the club would like to place on record its sincere thanks for his commitment to us. 3 league titles, 2 cup titles, and 2 playoffs with Tigers 2, and it does look like some of those long-standing guys who whom the step up to Div 1 has proved a little bit of a challenge for them due to life and what goes on around it, are starting to move away. Either way, goals for the Barons in this one for Nicholas Ofterson, a 3.9 for him, and goals as well for Matt Maurice, Jake Riley and Alex White, as the Tigers pick up yet another scalp in their first season at this level for some time. Elsewhere, I don't know whether he's still lurking, but a win for our friend Luca Tassardri and the Witness Wild. In this one, a 3-1 win for them against the Nottingham Lions. And no, Alex Rushby didn't score the goal. Did get the assist though. Luke Alston, Tristan Grimshaw, and Dan Hyde with the goals in this one for Widnes. Ewan Woodward with the lone goal for the Lions in a tight game towards the bottom there, as we can see there for our friend Luca, 40 saves on 41 shots. Evan Coles with 32 on 35. And then, because we knew they were going to do it to somebody again at some stage, because Deeside love scoring goals. They've been in lots of really sort of close, tight games recently. They've been winning by normal score lines. Well, they decided to sod that on Sunday. They beat Leeds 11-2. As we can also see heading into this one, Jake Witkowski now on 31 goals for the season. Colin Cromie only on 19. What a slacker! Must keep up. Must try harder. But a pretty neither side with a massively deep bench, it should be said. Ollie Wag and Fritz Heinzler with the goals for Leeds United too. And then we'll just take a deep breath and go through the Dragons ones. 3 for a hat trick for Ross Kennedy. 2 goals for Jared Dickinson. 2 for Jake Witkowski and a 6-point night for him. Was also a 6-point night for Kennedy as well. 2 for Colin Cromie and a goal each for Matt Barlow and Bailey Thomas. Just looking there at the net minding, both Orson Groot and Dan Norton getting some time between the pipes there. 54 shots there. Jace Gledhill getting the duties for the Dragons. 23 saves on 25 for him. And then on Sunday, well, thanks Billingham, we don't have your scorers on this one. But as you can imagine, poor Sheffield. They just can't seem to get anything out of this one. 20 games on the bounce, still in the Goose Egg Club alongside the Kilmarnock Thunder. At some stage, you do wonder whether Sheffield will be able to squeak out a result. But today, this day was not that day. And eventually, hopefully, Carol, where's the game sheet? That's what I'll say on that one. If you're still watching, what's going on there? Tyler really wasn't lying about Deeside beating Solihull last week. No, he wasn't, Luca. It should be said. And of course, that we talked about that last week, where Deeside had qualified for the Cup as a result. By the way, Blackburn, Telford with a big Saturday night and then losing out on Sunday away at the Hawks. It was pretty close. Blackburn managing to just sort of pull themselves away. Telford pulled them back 5-4, 3-all and 5-4 at one point, but then just that little bit extra for the Hawks. Sami Zajac with 3 goals already, having only just joined. And he just joined the side, but immediately making an impact does the EPL veteran. Goals for the Hawks in this one: a hat-trick for Andy McKinney and a 5.9 for him, 4 assists as well on that night for Adam Barnes, 2 goals for Jacob Lutwich and goals as well from James Royds, Lee Pollitt and Sam Zajac. As we noted, goals for Tigers too: 1 from Vlad Luka, 1 from Charlie Webb, 1 from Liam Bartholomew, and the other one from the player coach Jason Silverthorne. And then Solihull, well, they got back to winning ways on Sunday, and Nottingham again. Where's your game sheet? But Solihull were back rebounding from a tough loss away at Telford by putting the absolute boots into the Lions at the NIC, 12-0. There's irrespective of that, we don't have any scorers because Nottingham haven't done their game sheet. There's not much to say on that one. What else can you say? We'll have a look at the league table in a minute. Games for next weekend, though, in North 1. Blackburn and Solihull, huge game with title implications already at the beginning of December. That is 6 p.m. in Lancashire on Saturday night. 7:30 p.m. at the Castle, League and Cup action between Knights 2 and Tigers 2. A much busier Sunday, Deeside take on Billingham over in North Wales at 5:15. 5:30 at Hobbsmoat Road, Solihull and Blackburn will about face and try in the Midlands. Widnes take on Leeds Knights 2 at 5:30 over on Merseyside, and Telford are at home to Nottingham. That's 6 p.m. on Sunday. If we skip down, there's the league table in North 1 as it stands. Blackburn top, 2 points clear of Solihull. This weekend is massive in the context of the league title as a result. The gap then from between second and third, as you can see there, is pretty substantial. It's an 8-point gap between Solihull and Deeside. Telford still nipping at the heels as well of the Dragons. Billingham, the league champions, down there in 5th now. It's 28 points. They've overtaken Hull. And then at the bottom, well, looks like Leeds and Nottingham are going to make the playoffs almost by default. Sheffield, 20 games, 136 goals conceded and no points. The Cup at the moment, though, looks like this. Deeside we know have qualified, but it's a matter of where they finish as a result. Blackburn are the only team who are fixed in their position. They will face one of either Deeside, Solihull or Hull. And well, we talked about goals, because Slough kicked off South 1 on Saturday evening by absolutely walloping the Cardiff Fire, a 10-0 shellacking. And as we can see there as well, Ollie Hemmings said more, only on 9 goals in the league. Ollie Hemmings miles on 14 already in 8 games for the Jets in this one. Just an absolute cracker of a game where there are only 2 penalties. Neil Lydiard taking the only individual penalty of the evening. God love you, Lids. As we can see there, 6.9 there for Seb Moore, even though he only scored the one. Even though he's only scored the 1 goal, 1+5 for him. 2 goals for Ollie Hemmings-Mar, 1 for 2 for Juha Lindgren, 1 from Neil Lydiard because the black hole keeps appearing in my kitchen. Goals as well from Jacob Minter, Carl Bradburn, Liam Clark, and Marcus Mitchell, another man who doesn't get on the board very often. And as we can see there as well, a combined shutout. Matt Smittle faces 3 shots through 20 minutes before Connor Dudley, who was called in last minute to play for the Jets in this one. He gets the final 40 minutes and keeps a clean sheet. 8 shots for him. Happy birthday, Connor. Who turned 18 during the week as well. Ben Scallon and Brocken Evans, God love them, they get absolutely shellacked in this one, shot after shot. The Fire put up 11 shots, the Jets put up 63. And then, well, another shutout on Saturday evening, this time for the Invicta Dynamos. Sorry, Max, we love you, but the Invicta Dynamos just a little bit too strong in this one. It's a clean sheet on both ends through 20 minutes of all the Dynamos kicked into gear. 2-0 up at the end of the second period through Aaron Connolly and Ashley Jackson. Before goals in the third from Mads Toon, and then 2 goals from Aaron Connolly to complete his hat-trick, finishing off and keeping the points in Kent in this one. A 30-shot shutout for Brad Windebank as Max makes 49 saves. And then something of a head scratcher this one. Challenge Cup, not League. So, but as you can see from the penalties here, a lot happened. A lot of fighting. Brandon Miles having a fight with Ben Payne. With a bunch of people. He did fight Ben Painter earlier in the game before getting kicked out for fighting again in the first period, for getting a fighting, then a misconduct, then a misconduct for an obscene gesture, because fill up the bingo card, I guess. But we also saw fights as well, but we saw Ryan Watt thrown out for giving Jacob Soper something of a one-sided fight, but a tempestuous game that ultimately Slough give Streatham a kicking on the high road in the Challenge Cup. Like I say, fortunately for the Redhawks, not league play, but something that can hopefully take some lessons from in a tempestuous and tough game for the Redhawks in the game where they started. Brett Shepherd before Danny Milton came in relief later on when he and Matt Smittle were about to go to blows before the linesman stepped in, which I have to say, I love you Linos, but you do need to look after yourselves. If 2 guys are going to try and have a fight, maybe let them have the fight and then work that bit out afterwards. Ziggy Beasley with the lone goal for the Redhawks. Goals in this one from the Jets. 2 from Ben Eagley Newman against his old side, and then goals as well from Lewis English, Christian Moore, Juha Lindgren, Jacob Soper, and 1+2 on the night for Ollie Hemmings-Mar. A 6-point weekend for the Invicta Dynamos as they took the spoils down in the southwest against the Swindon Wildcats. 7-3 the final score in this one, and another goal on the weekend for Aaron Connolly. It was a good start to the season though, Swindon. 5-7 record, not terrible. They don't go to extras is the lesson here for the Wildcats. But ever since that loss to Romford, it's been a little bit rocky, all things considered. Goals in this one for the Cats coming from Will Harding, Ben Nethersell and Oscar Sagan. The Dynamos with 7 different goal scorers in this one. Harrison Prentice, Daniel Gattenby, Mads Toon, Ashley Jackson, Aaron Connolly, Jared Vigar stepping up from the Guildford Phoenix and getting a goal for him in this one, as well as a goal for Regan O'Neill. And then the Bucks got another win. Hooray for Max and hooray for our friends down there in Romford as they win 5-1 away against the Cardiff Fire in that race to avoid the wooden spoon in the 8-team South 1. Certainly Romford 3-0 up by the end of the first period and just basically having that little bit of extra quality to keep the Fire at bay. A pretty comfortable win on the shot count as well. The Fire's lone goal coming from Ewan Davies. The goals for the Buccaneers, 2 from Shea Woolmore and goals as well from Cole McCluskey, Artyom Kazaks and Sam Robinson. And we'll just have a look at the numbers for our boy Max. 34 from 35, pretty solid performance from him. Brocken Evans having to come in at one point during the first period, which meant Brocken got a 2-shot shutout in 2 minutes and 38. Ben Scanlon making 42 saves on 47 shots. Into next weekend then in South 1, 5 p.m. down on the south coast. Always a cracker between the Solent Devils and the Streatham Redhawks. This one in the league as the Redhawks look to rebound from that kicking they got at home against Slough. 5:15 at the Sapphire for the Buccaneers and the Swindon Wildcats too. And then Challenge Cup action. The now Alan Lackless Chelmsford Chieftains at home against the Invicta Dynamos. All league action on Sunday in South 1. Invicta take on Solent, Chelmsford take on Romford in the derby, and Swindon take on Slough at the Link Centre. More shots than Jacob Hammond were routine saves ball accounts, says Andrew, talking about North 1 there. Irrespective of that, they didn't have 50 shots. I'm sorry, but they didn't. They just didn't have that many shots, is all I can say on that one. Into North 2, and another win for the Coventry Blaze as they look to keep tabs towards the top of the table and at least get themselves some really favourable playoff draws. They win at the world's most versatile arena, beating the Kingston Sharks by 6 goals to 2. Tied at 1. Just 7.5 minutes in before Coventry asserted their dominance. Another goal in the season as well for Jodie Alderson-Smith for the NIHL Blaze, of course, playing a lot of hockey between playing in the NIHL 2 and in the WNIHL. 2 goals for the Sharks, both from Mackenzie Barker. Elsewhere, as I say, for the Blaze, 2 goals from Jordan Bloom, and then goals, as we mentioned, Jodie Alderson-Smith, Ollie Dixon, Charles Coney, and Sam Prosser. The Sheffield Titans have been the flip side of the coin to the Sheffield Scimitars in NIHL action when it comes to Sheffield. The Scimitars, of course, having an absolutely torrid season. The Titans are absolutely steamrolling sides and a big game against tough opposition at home. But the Titans sneak past the Bellingham Buccaneers by 4 goals to 3. The winning goal coming really late on the power play. 57-56. Tom Humphreys with the game-winning goal. In that one, the other goals for Sheffield, Humphreys had another one. Goals as well from Harry Roebuck and Noah Barnes. Artem Pavlov, of course, former Israeli elite league player, now playing for the Buccaneers. Stephen Wallace and Callum Clark on the board for the Bucks in this one, as Sheffield keep the points there. And then the door is open, and another team has finally left the Goose Egg Club. The Nottingham Lions win for the first time this season in any competition, and they are there. They have 2 points on the board as a result of their overtime victory against Bradford. But Bradford, God love you, Bradford were 5-0 up at the end of the first period and lost. Let that sink into your head for a minute as just how bonkers that is. That they were 5-0 to the good and lost this game. Ultimately, the big hero is Jake Fisher. He scores the overtime winning goal. And if you've not seen the video, go over to NIHL North Updates on Facebook. Harley's put it on there. And I'll tell you what, it's kind of heartwarming. And you can only imagine the absolute load that the Lions 2 have gone through to turn up every week and to finally get themselves over the line. Congratulations to the folk at Lions 2 for managing to get that one. For Bradford, well, you can only scratch your head and wonder on occasions like that. 2 goals for Josh Stockton, and goals as well from Aaron Jordan, Ollie Massey, Jared Knowles, Connor Medley, and Paul Lane. Goals in this one for the Lions. A hat-trick on the night for Jake Fisher and a 5-point night for him, as well as goals for Charlie Davenport, Rupert Sharp, Edward Clark, Harry Molson, and Ethan Wilcox. And the Blaze, well, they had a good Saturday, and then the Challenge Cup on the Sunday, they did not have a good night. Shut out away in Manchester. A big win for the Altrincham Aces in Cup action as they beat the Blaze by 3 goals to 0. Kane Morin with 2 on the night, and Billy King with the other goal there. A 37-shot shutout from Mike Rogers in Cup action there for the Aces. Not a busy weekend in North 2 this one. Just a couple of games on both nights. D-Side 2 take on the Sheffield Titans. Can the Dragons upset the Titans as it goes on this one? We will find out on Saturday evening. Coventry look to avenge in League and League Cup action as they take on the Aces at the Sky Dome. Sunday, Billingham versus Bradford. Can Bradford recover from that ridiculousness of last Sunday? We'll find out. And the Lions 2 go for their second win of the season. They take on the Coventry NIHL Blaze. It does occur to me that we didn't look at the tables in South 1, which we'll do very quickly. As we can see there, Chelmsford, top of the table, but both Streatham and Slough, quite a lot of games in hand. Slough have got 4 games in hand on the Chieftains. And then in the Cup, nothing is decided. But the Swindon Wildcats have qualified for the semi-finals as a result. In the Challenge Cup, which is just an extra competition on top of an extra competition, still plenty to be decided. In North 2, as we know, the Sheffield Titans, the powerhouse as it were, but the Sting still with their destiny in their own hands. Sutton have 3 games in hand on the Titans and are 8 points back, meaning the Sting would need to win out. But if they win out, they would be top of the table. And then that big drop down, 4 points below the sting of the Billingham Buccaneers. And as we can see, they're finally at the bottom. It took them 11 games to do so, but the Goose Egg Club have kicked out the Nottingham Lions too. They are on the board for 25-26. We just poked down there. Only the one team, of course, qualified in the Cup. That's Sheffield. Everything else is still very much up for grabs at the moment. Deeside and Nottingham are the two teams ultimately eliminated. Kingston still mathematically can qualify. It would take something of a miracle for them to do so. And where Joe, unfortunately, has not managed to get all of the results done in South 2, we are relying on just the scores from the website as we kick a couple of bits and pieces down. But you can hopefully see that all there as a result. As we mentioned last week, a fair few games going on in the division in South 2, and ultimately Peterborough just keep absolutely rolling along. They batter Cardiff 6-1 down in South Wales on Saturday evening to keep themselves firmly atop the table. Haringey managed to squeak themselves past MK Thunder, worked by a score of 5-3 at Ali Pally on Saturday evening, and then a close, tight affair at the Ox Pens, but one that the Rising Stars end up winning, and big for the Rising Stars. Lots of good performances, but not necessarily the results for Oxford. They want to make sure they can keep themselves in playoff contention. A win in regulation against the Spitfires will do that. On Sunday, a win down at the Riverside for the Chelmsford Warriors. They beat the Bristol Pitbulls 2 by 6-2. The Spitfires do get themselves a win on the weekend in the Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup. That's the extra cup competition named for the famed Lee Valley pioneer Eddie Joseph himself. The Spitfires winning in Invicta by 6-4. We never count out the Invicta Mustangs. That's rule 2 of the BOTW. But ultimately, Slough getting themselves the points in the cup. A second league win of the season for the against the Rising Stars. Lee Valley have got another win on the board in the league, which is pretty crazy, all things considered. I can't remember Lee Valley winning this many games this early for quite some time. And then the other game from Sunday, the Canucks managed to get themselves on the board this weekend after losing heavily to Peterborough the night before. They get themselves a big win down on the south coast against the Solent Junior Devils. 8-4 the Canucks win, having won the same fixture last season. This upcoming weekend then, a few games, quite a busy Sunday in the division, just 2 games on Saturday. Invicta take on Cardiff down in Kent, that's a 7pm face-off on Saturday, and MK will take on Lee Valley, that's a 7pm face-off at the Thunderdome. On Sunday then, Guildford back in action, of course, with the Flames at home on Saturday. The Phoenix get Sunday, they take on the Chelmsford Warriors at 5:30. Oxford back at the Ox Pens against Haringey at 6:15. Peterborough versus Invicta in the Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup on Sunday, that's at 6:30pm. And then the late face-off, 7:30pm at the Pound, Bristol take on Lee Valley. As we click that button then, we should give ourselves the South 2 table. And as we can see, still perfect through 13 games of the Peterborough Phantoms 2. They are in a very comfortable position over the Guildford Phoenix. The Phoenix's destiny is no longer in their hands if they cannot find a way to beat Peterborough this season. Invicta in third, still keeping themselves there or thereabouts, although they are 4 points back of Guildford with having played a game more. Haringey, Cardiff, Slough, Chelmsford and Bristol make up the playoffs at the moment. Oxford on the outside looking in, but are level on points with Pitbulls too. Bristol, though, do have 2 games in hand. MK, new to the division as we this season, are down in 10th on 8 points, as are the Solent Junior Devils. Bottom of the table are Lee Valley, but on 7 points already. Solent and MK and Oxford and Bristol will be looking over their shoulders. If you look there, if you think those last 2 playoff spots, 3 points separate 7th and 12th in the division. Right, we have gone through the SNL and Division 1 and Division 2, so we're just going to pause for a second and have a drink before we chat about bits and pieces from the WNIHL. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything anybody wants to chuck in. Lots going on, and like I say, the Sheffield Titans still for me remain one of the most fascinating stories in British hockey this year, where having always just sort of floated around for the last couple of years and all of a sudden out of nowhere, they're absolutely smashing their way through North 2 this season. Fascinating stuff. To watch there. And like I say, Lee Valley managing to pick up some points, only good for the division all in all. to have the lines a little bit more competitive. And yeah, as we saw, 3 points separating the final 2 playoff spots and the bottom of the table. All it takes is for a crazy result somewhere, and Lee Valley could be in the playoffs for the first time in what? At least, I can't remember before COVID when they made the playoffs. So it'd be huge for Lee Valley if they are able to do so. Either way, it's time to look at the WNIHL Elite League as we have a look at women's hockey for bits and pieces. A big Saturday result for Whitley Bay. Obviously, a long track trip down to the high road to take on the Streatham Storm, but a 3-2 victory for the Beacons in this one as they look to keep pace at the top of the table. Steph Towns, Evie May Tyndall, and Emma Lamberton with the goals for the Beacons in this one. Beth Milne and Isabel Whiteley on the board for the Storm, and the other team at the bottom of the table, the Bristol Huskies, put up a stern performance against the league champion Solihull Vixens, but ultimately not to be. The Huskies were 1-0 up in this game through Abigail Minter, but goals from Peyton Fincher and Jodie Alderson-Smith, because it's always Jodie Alderson-Smith getting the win there for the Vixens on this one. As we then have a quick look at the WNHL Elite League table, Whitley Bay still top, as we can see, 4 points clear of the Queen Bees, but the Queen Bees have got 5 games in hand, and Solihull have 4 games in hand. So still the title race very much up in the air for some time to come. Still, Guildford in fourth, and then it is Streatham who lead Bristol towards the bottom of the table by 2 points. The Huskies though have 2 games in hand on the Storm. What we need to do is, no, it always does that. There we go. Let's move that a bit more central. And we'll have a look at the results from around the rest of the WNIHL. And of course, we talked about this last week, the ridiculousness of the fact that Caledonia and Nottingham are playing each other 2 times in the space of a few hours. The Saturday game up for the Steel Queens, the Steel Queens winning quite comfortably by 11 goals to 3. Goals for the Steel Queens in this one, a 5-goal game from Maya Beretta, 2 goals from Victoria Carson, as well as goals from Molly McGillan, Isabel Johnson, Beth Diaz-Schoon and Hayley Masterson. A hat-trick for the Vipers from Jess Jones, scoring a hat-trick and losing 11-3. I mean, that feels very British hockey. And then at the 8 a.m. face-off the next day, a 2-0 shutout victory for the Steel Queens. Katie Trachtenberg and Maya Beretta's 6th goal in 2 games. Doing the business there for the Steel Queens. They pick up the maximum on the weekend. In North 1, the other game in North 1, as we can see there, a shutout victory for the Kingston Diamonds away at Widnes Wild. Danny Newlove with 2 goals, and goals as well from Melissa Veal, CJ Ashton, Mia Forbes, Gemma Wallace and Lydia Lutwich. The one game in 1 South from the weekend, a close-fought encounter at the Riverside, but one that the Swindon Top Cats win. They beat the Chelmsford Cobras by 3 goals to 2. Charmaine Easton with both goals for the hosts. Miley Drazy, Katie Reid and Emma Comer with the goals for the Top Cats. South 2 in the Valerie Conference, which I'm pretty certain that Andrew was at least at one of those games. Slough winning something of a local derby against the Southern Amazons by 4 goals to 1. Kat Losnitzer with a hat-trick and Dee West Attrell with the other goal there. Miranda Brown with the lone goal for the Amazons. Just looking at it's Chelmsford Pythons, the second team to the Cobras in the WNIHL. They lose at home by 4 goals to 1 against the Haringey Greyhounds. Gemma Johnson, Jiang Li, Yami Mashanda Corliss and Emma Stigter with the goals for the Greyhounds. Tilly Howe the lone goal for the Pythons at home in that one. He says just making sure his bits and pieces have actually ticked themselves all the way through. I don't have quite as in-depth bits and pieces, but I know Andrew is sticking stuff into the chat as a result. But elsewhere, the South 2 Elizabeth Conference, big win for the Lee Valley Vampires away at the Cambridge Kodiaks 2, 12-2. Pretty comfortable result there for Lee Valley in the end. A 2-all tie at the Skydome between the Phoenix and Huskies 2. And then Kodiaks 2 on Sunday. Well, they weren't close on Saturday. They got closer on Sunday, but Kodiaks 2 end up losing out to the MK Falcons 2 by 3 goals to 2. In the Under-16s League, a 5-2 win for the Deeside Dragons at home against the Manchester Storm in the battle in the Northwest. The Sheffield Shadows with a comfortable win over the Kingston Diamonds 14-2 at the world's most versatile arena for the Shadows Under-16s. In the South Under-16s League, the Bristol Huskies Puppies with an 8-1 win over the Midlands Wrekin Raiders out of Telford. A good win there at the Pound for the Puppies. And then a 2-0 win for the Ice Bees Under-16s against the Swindon Top Kittens. Just looking at the fixtures then for this upcoming weekend, as Andrew has very kindly provided me a list. In the Elite League, a big one in terms of the title, 6:55 p.m. at Hobbsmoat Road this Saturday. The Solihull Vixens and the Queen Bees is your lone Elite League fixture. In North 1, Saturday 4:30 p.m. Kingston versus Nottingham, and on Sunday at 6:40 Sheffield Shadows versus Widnes Wild Women. In South 1, one game on the high road in South 1, Streatham Storm 2 versus Chelmsford Cobras at 6:45 p.m. face-off. And then on Sunday at the Link Centre, the Swindon Top Cats and the Fire Bees will go one-on-one. North 2, in North 2, Valerie Conference, Leeds Roses versus Telford is 4:45 p.m. on Saturday. Sunday 12:30, Kingston Diamonds versus Blackburn Hawks Women, and Sheffield Shadows versus Whitley Bay Beacons 2 is at 4:40. South 2 Valerie Conference, 6:15 p.m. down in Gosport, Solent versus Chelmsford is your lone game there. And North 2 Elizabeth Conference, Caledonia Steel Queen Bees versus Leeds Thorns is on Saturday. Also on Saturday, Manchester Storm take on Kingston Diamonds 3. We then click that button because it means we have done the absolute lot of it. We have gone through every senior game played over the last week across all of British hockey, and we have given you all the fixtures for this upcoming weekend as well. That means we open the door. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, stick anything you want in the chat. We're about 10 minutes or so to chat through some bits and pieces before we get out of here. Anything you want to talk about from across the world of hockey, please do throw it into the chat. There's a few bits and pieces, of course, to talk about in the NHL. Anything that you want to talk about from anywhere, I'm going to pause and breathe and have a drink. But yeah, a pretty busy, like I say, a pretty crazy weekend. Big game in the WNHL Elite League, of course, this weekend, as we can see. Solihull and the Queen Bees. It was them who battled out last year. Solihull snuck by and got themselves their first league title in quite some time. It had been quite a bit of Queen Bees dominance post-COVID. And ultimately, it's good that teams are starting to... there's a bit more parity in the league. It does appear to be something of a top 3 and a bottom 3 in the WNHL Elite. Like I say, the craziness of an 8 a.m. face-off having played each other the day before... It doesn't feel like great scheduling, all things considered, in the WNHL, but a big weekend there for the Caledonia Steel Queens as a result, getting the maximum against the Nottingham Vipers and getting a shutout into the bargain on that Sunday morning. So congratulations to them as a result. Of course, these bits and pieces kicking on in the NHL. Alexander Ovechkin keeps scoring. It was nice as well to see a first NHL goal for Ozzy Weisblatt of the Nashville Predators, of course. For people unfamiliar, he comes from a hockey playing family. His brother Orca, who most recently had played for the Athens Rock Lobsters in the FPHL, unfortunately signed a contract to play in the ECHL this season. Unfortunately, killed in a motoring accident, and so a big night for him, managing to get himself on the score sheet in the National Hockey League for the first time. Of course, there is a few bits and pieces that have obviously come to attention. They're a bit more controversial to talk about. Of course, Nolan Foote signed by the Chicago Wolves of the AHL, and a first game back in the National Hockey League for Carter Hart, playing last night for the Vegas Golden Knights. Of course, both men coming off the trial where they were accused of sexual assault whilst members of the Canadian under-20s team. At the World Junior Championships a good few years ago, of course, dividing a lot of opinion. I am very. If you haven't, I did retweet a piece where, for people who want to kind of have a think about why it is so controversial that just because a person is cleared in a criminal court of wrongdoing, that people would still have an issue with people still being paid professionally to play hockey as a result. Of course, you are more than entitled to your views. For me, it does feel a little bit interesting given the circumstance of what happened. Of course, this is the issue. A criminal court is not an arbiter of morals, and so obviously people are still very upset that these gentlemen are back playing hockey in the way that they are. Not getting up to follow the Caps at 3:30 a.m. this week as they go through California. Amen to that, Jamie. I am well past that point. I am too old for that nonsense. Too old for that nonsense now. Gold, love it as a result. But yeah, certainly obviously a good result for the Caps beating the Los Angeles Kings in their final meeting against Andrei Kopitar. Of course, we know that Kopitar, two-time Cup winner with the Kings, the greatest Slovenian hockey player of all time. I don't think that's a very controversial thing to say, but he will. But he is retiring at the end of the year. We will see what happens. I'm travelling to Invicta this Sunday, my first NHL 1 South game. Looking forward to seeing former Raiders players. How cold is the rink? It's a Planet Ice rink. Make your own jokes on that one, I think would be my response to that. Dave? Is all I will say on that front there. But yeah, it's cold. It's cold is what I am told. I've always managed. I've tried to go to Invicta a couple of times. Because for people who aren't aware, the Invicta Dynamos play in Gillingham, which is in Kent. It's a big county town in Kent. And my dad is about 45-50 minutes away. But every time I suggest going to watch ice hockey when I'm down visiting my dad, strangely doesn't go down very well. So I never managed to get away with it. I can just about get away with going to watch the football in Ramsgate when I'm down. So not great. But my dad fortunately does live in a very pretty part of the world, so I will kind of take that, as it were. But yeah, cold is my understanding, Dave. Be prepared. Also, it's an ice rink in December. Do with that information what you will. So what have we got upcoming this weekend? Wear a warm coat and I would avoid the rollover hot dogs. That's a good thing for life, I would think. Big game on Sunday in WNHL 1 South. Top 2, Top Cats versus Firebees. Third game between the teams and both have won one each. Thank you for that. Thank you for that one, Andrew. Yes, we obviously do go through the results, but we never seem to get a tables graphic from EIH to be able to do anything with on that one. The Firebees, the second team from the Queen Bees. The Queen Bees are the team that play in the Elite League. Firebees play in 1 South. Never in a position. The Firebees cannot be promoted, is my understanding as a result. But obviously, like I say, a big game and a big developmental pathway for sort of female ice hockey players in Berkshire. D-side was warm. Peterborough is cold in August. That is very true. D-side actually was quite warm, but to be fair, when I went there, I was standing around a lot of people, and I was at least 2 beers deep. I was 2 beers deep pretty quick, so I was warm with quite some speed. Peterborough is cold in August. Yes, Peterborough is notorious for just being awful all the year round. I really hope now they've sorted out Basingstoke, or at least they're getting towards sorting out Basingstoke, that Peterborough will get some attention, as will Invicta, though I think Peterborough kind of needs it more quicker on that front. We will do our usual quick check just to make sure any news hasn't immediately come flying out. Nothing in the immediacy that I can see, but we will just, like I say, very quickly make sure that we haven't skipped over any of the really big news. I do know, of course, for folk who might be interested in such bits and pieces, the folk from The Heated Take, which is the new Guildford Flames podcast, have come out to see. There's not been tons of fan media around the Flames. Now this year they've got the podcast and me talking about them all at once. But The Heated Take have got a really interesting interview that I listened to today, where they interviewed Flames forward Jack Chacombe. Thoroughly interesting chat. Really worth a listen if you're interested in hearing about the import experience in Britain in the Elite League. I appreciate we're quite an NIHL heavy podcast, NIHL heavy show, given the fact that we go through every NIHL game and the SNL and the WNIHL into the bargain. But we shall see what happens on that front as a result there. But like I say, nothing immediately coming out there. But yeah, go check out that interview. I found it really interesting. I must confess. The one thing, of course, I think that I did see that one person didn't like, but I absolutely adored, was the sight of Cade Nielsen and Brett Newman getting involved in professional wrestling. Now, for folk who are not familiar, we need to lay some groundwork here. Ice hockey in BOTW Towers here, of course, we have all of the hockey shelves and all the bits and pieces. In fact, I've got my In fact, I got the gold from from my sticker set because I had to mend it with some super glue during the week. But hockey is my thing. As a family, we watch a lot of professional wrestling. The first time my wife and I ever went out was to a professional wrestling show before we started dating. So the fact to see hockey and wrestling smashed together like that was different, it should be said. But the owners of the clan do also operate clan wrestling, which runs its shows out of the Braehead Arena, and it's got a variety of Scottish wrestling luminaries involved with it, which was also interesting to see. And I saw one person who was like, "Oh, this is terrible. What if they got themselves injured?" As somebody who's watched a lot of professional wrestling, they did not do anywhere near enough to get themselves. If they got themselves injured doing that, then they are clumsier than me, and that is a very, very low bar. But awesome to see that little bit of crossover. I know sometimes the crossovers have felt a bit forced at Braehead, and the fans haven't really enjoyed it. I personally loved seeing Brett Newman give a modified ankle lock to a professional wrestler. I thought that was very cool. Watching Cade Nielsen swinging a hockey stick at Big Damo was strange. And if you aren't familiar with Big Damo, Killian Dane from the WWE, same man. So yes, more odd crossovers. I did joke, of course, to some people. We need a wrestling crossover in Guildford, and somebody pointed out to me, look at all the injuries they've had this year. What a terrible idea that would be. Point made. But more wrestling hockey crossover, please. I like it when two of the things I really love come smashing together. It's really good fun. Actually, when the Flames are in Belfast, so there is no home game for the Flames the weekend of the 13th and 14th, I will be in Bristol watching wrestling with my wife and my son. So that'll be a lot of fun. What's Janie put here? 99 is helping out the World Cup draw on Friday as part 4 greats from the big 4 US sports, Shaq, Brady and Harry. They couldn't have gotten a better baseball player than Aaron Judge to help out with the draw from baseball? Really? Like, Judge is like one of the biggest players right now, and if you're wanting a big American to do it, I get it. It does strike me there are people, could you got Cal Ripken, maybe? I don't know. I don't like the Yankees, so I don't know what to tell you on that. Last call. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything else anybody wants to chuck into the chat, please do so. We'll cover it very, very quickly before we disappear off. No other news that I am immediately able to see. A big thank you as ever for folk joining us this evening. It's always appreciated, our little mishmash, our little crew that we get here together on a Wednesday evening. And if you watch on catch up, just like I say, there was no catch-up word this week. Just stick a comment down. Just stick a comment in the comments and just tell us where you're watching from. Just do that this week if you're watching on catch-up at any stage. Just say where you're watching from, and none of this like the town you're watching from, not my sofa. Let's not go for that. The one thing I would probably say is that I'm looking to, over the course of Christmas, looking to make some technological changes. I'm trying to consider doing some different stuff. I just feel like the show needs a bit more oomph, and I'm just trying to think of the best ways to do that. And I don't know whether it's a graphics refresh, and I don't know whether it's I don't necessarily know what that looks like. I'm sitting down and thinking about ways to just kind of improve the show. We should also say that looking at bits and pieces, I'm not 100% sure what exactly we will do Christmas week, because for people who can count, we are due a show on Christmas Eve. Now, I don't necessarily know whether I'm going to get away with having a show on Christmas Eve because of family bits and pieces. I will offer it out to you, the audience, as to what we do, whether we do something earlier in the week, whether we do something on Boxing Day on the Friday instead, whether we just have a week off. Happy to hear people's thoughts and feelings on that one. I will tweet stuff out about it as well. Just let us know whether we go Tuesday night and go in before AVFTB. Let us know what your thoughts are on that one, because like I say, I'm not certain I can get away with doing a show on Christmas Eve just because of a few logistical bits and pieces. So let me know what you think, and let's see what we can kind of do, because it would be good to have the BOTW Christmas party. Maybe we do Boxing Day and do it, and we kind of scrap the result bits and pieces and just have a big sort of like Christmas New Year chat instead, because of course it would mean that New Year's Eve would be a show. And that would be a bit of an interesting one to do on New Year's Eve, with people kind of going out in bits and pieces. But I'll put something out in the next couple of days on the Facebook and the Blue Sky and the X, and we'll kind of see what people think about it on that. Definitely a show next week. We'll definitely have a show on the 10th. We'll definitely have a show on the 17th. But we'll figure out what we're going to do over Christmas and New Year as a result. It might be Boxing Day, maybe New Year's Eve. We'll kind of see how we feel on that one. So there'll be plenty of hockey to talk about one way or the other. But like I say, maybe we go a bit more free form over the holiday period, or maybe we just have a week off altogether during Christmas week and just leave it at that and come back a week later, because ultimately you guys are all busy. I'm busy. I'm going to be busy too. So maybe, like I say, we'll see. We'll let you guys, as the community, decide what we do. Either way, nothing else to talk about. We'll call it there. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to British ice hockey. Follow my commentary journey through the wonderful medium that is In the Box Thinking. Of course, had a week off, but every game I commentate on is going onto the website, as you can follow my journey commentating in the Elite League for the Guildford Flames. And we will be back next week because, of course, I am back in the commentary box this weekend on Flames TV for the Guildford Flames versus the Fife Flyers. Face-off is at 6. You can join us at about 5:55 for all the good stuff from their streams and all that available from guildfordflames.com. You can go over there and get your tickets for that. And then, of course, you will get In the Box Thinking, a breakdown, the behind-the-scenes experience of what it's like to commentate on ice hockey in this country, as well as a breakdown of the game in general. The other thing to check out is Hockey Stories. There is a new piece in development. Like I say, I'm 600 words down. I just need to sit down and work out some time to go and bash through the rest of it. But a really interesting one. We're kind of treading old ground in a new way in this one that's upcoming, and I think you'll really enjoy it. But of course, plenty of pieces that we've done over that one. Nearly 15 years worth of stuff to check out over on the website, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Head down into the description of the YouTube video here. Of course, you can get the links to all of our social medias. We are on X, we're on Facebook, we're on Blue Sky, and there's the link down there as well to our virtual busking hat over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. Never going behind a paywall, but it does cost money to do bits and pieces like that, and it will cost to maybe do some of the changes that I'm thinking about doing. So if you enjoy what you get and you want to help keep the lights on and keep the wheels spinning, please do consider heading over. And if you haven't got the money, you don't need to give it. Please just share bits and pieces out. Like I said, we want to keep that algorithm hamster happy, fat and fed, because we are fighting the algorithm a little bit and have been this season. So anything you can do to spread the word, always greatly appreciated. And then, of course, back here Wednesday evenings during the British hockey season, where we talk about absolutely every game from every senior league across Britain, male and female, Elite League, National, Division 1, Division 2, North and South, WNIHL, SNL. If it's played, it's got a place here on Wednesday night, 8 p.m, the BOTW What's Current stream. Belfast to Bradford, Leeds to Lee Valley. We leave no stone unturned. Thank you once again for joining us for another week's worth of bits and pieces here. It's mad to think it's December. It feels like we blinked. Like I said, having a weekend off was no bad thing. Having a week where I could have sold my tickets and done something else with it. I could have found another way to take my boy to go see it. But ultimately, a good thing to just pause and reflect on what we've done, what I've managed to do so far this season, both commentating as a new thing for me and what I'm doing with the website and what needs to happen with Banners on the Wall and what things may need to change. Not bad changes, not all changes are making stuff smaller and worse. I know it feels like a lot of stuff gets changed in our lives in the moment in this country, and it's always things getting worse, more adverts on streaming sites, less bits and pieces. No, just making what we've got here as good as we can possibly make it. And that includes you guys. If you guys don't watch, if you guys don't come and join in, it's a pretty lonely existence to kind of roll with it. So I'm thankful for all of you as we head towards Christmas. Be happy. And if you can't be happy, then wherever you are, please do everything you can to please be safe. Please, as my friend Scott Hills would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Ross saying stay safe. And so long till next time. You can catch me, as I said, on Flames TV this Saturday for Guildford versus Fife. Enjoy your hockey wherever you find it this weekend. And as always, we will come back and look at absolutely all of it next Wednesday night here on the BOTW YouTube channel. It will be the BOTW What's Current stream. Have a good weekend wherever you find